watching the religious talk about evidence is really kind of a hoot. Evidence is not, well, it sounds good to me, which is pretty much all they care about. But I think they know that they ought to have evidence, so they purposely misunderstand what evidence is and why it is important. Then you get two theists having a personal conversation where other people can listen in, and it all comes tumbling down. They're trying, granted, but they're not trying nearly hard enough. So let's see where this all goes wrong. We're back today with Cave to the Cross Apologetics because why the heck not? It's another internal discussion on a podcast of some sort where the guy on the left, whoever he is, I have no idea who these people are, he talks to the guy on the right, no clue who he is, about things that they believe in common, as if those things are actually true in the real world. Now, I'd be happy for them to provide evidence for that, but they don't, because it's part of the religious echo chamber that they live in, and they don't have to defend themselves, at least they don't think that they do. Just about everybody watching also really wants to believe that's their intended audience. And it's too bad that we don't, because we're not part of their intended audience. We actually expect rational justification, which is what they're talking about today. So let's get to it.
And so this chapter gives us some common aspects of the evidentialist approach. And there are basically three that they want us to be aware of. First, evidentialists focus on inductive as opposed to deductive argumentation.
I know that we're going to quibble on a lot of things here, so don't get upset when I do. Let's go ahead and provide some basic explanations for the concepts that they're using, because I think it's unlikely that they're going to do so on their own. Now, there are a lot of ways to talk about this, and we're probably going to end up covering a whole bunch, but the most important difference, I think at least, between inductive and deductive reasoning is that inductive reasoning tries to develop an idea, whereas deductive reasoning tries to test an existing idea. Deductive reasoning is a top-down approach, moving from a general premise to a specific case, whereas inductive reasoning, it goes the other way. Now, I don't know where he's heading with this exactly, so I guess we should get back to it and hopefully get some more context.
Right, so they look at inductive because it's based on the facts of the world, right, and the facts of history, and so there's no way to give deductive evidence for facts of history is what they're arguing.
I guess? I mean, I suppose it depends on what evidence you have available. If I take, say, the Trojan War, since we've used this one before, and the only data that you have on the Trojan War are the Homeric epics, then you can only get so far in determining what is actually true and what is not out of the existing data set that you have. Some things, they're definitely, obviously not true, and others, we just don't know. And that's why we refuse to acknowledge that the Trojan War actually happened, because we had no evidence that it did until we did. We made archaeological discoveries which supported, at least in part, the Homeric narrative to some degree. So we admitted that there was sufficient evidence for some of it, but not all of it. There is no evidence for a Trojan horse, for example. It's possible that the city was attacked with battering rams with equine decorations, and that led to the stories, but we've got absolutely no way of knowing for sure, at least not now. That could change in the future. We don't know what we don't know, but at the moment, we can only go with what we know. There certainly is no evidence of any kind for any of the gods or goddesses or whatever that we're told about in the epics. There's no evidence for Helen of Troy, although I guess we probably wouldn't expect any, as women were basically commodities in the 2nd millennium BCE. Although Carl Belgin did discover a lot of clay tablets at the Palace of Pylos in southwestern Greece, which talked about women being taken as slaves in Turkey and then being taken to Pylos and forced into labor, and that certainly could have been seen as evidence that women, or women captives, spurred the soldiers of their nation to come and try and get them back. We just don't know, and we really can't speculate too heavily, but I guess it's at least a possibility, but you can't say it happened for sure.
And so it focuses on induction as opposed to deduction. Secondly, since it focuses on induction, as a result of that, there's the focus on the probability of the conclusion of the argument. So you don't have certainty because you're dealing with facts in the world or of the world.
If you're dealing with the demonstrable facts of the world, then you do have certainty, don't you? I mean, you have as close as you're likely to get. Facts are certain, relatively, or they aren't facts, right? Or at the very least, they are determined to such a degree that it's kind of a little silly to have serious doubts, I would assume, at least in the broader strokes. This is the problem with having lots of these videos that start in the middle of a conversation, or often in the middle of a sentence or a word, because you often don't get the larger context that they're talking about. Maybe it's going to become more clear as time goes on. I guess we'll have to see.
And so you have probability. And then thirdly, they argue that they want neutral, content neutral methods in order to examine the arguments. And so they use, historical methods, legal methods, and scientific methods as they consider their various arguments.
That I will agree with. I'll put it another way. I want something that can be validated outside of your head instead of something where I have to rely on your personal interpretations or feelings or desires about the matter to get information. I don't care what your book says. I care what I can go out and find independently about what your book says. It's like I always say, I care about science. I don't care about scientists. Just because a scientist says something, that doesn't make that thing true. Only the data that the scientists used to come to that conclusion matters. And the same thing goes for the religious. I don't care about your faith. I don't care what you believe. I care only what you can demonstrate. And sadly, in this case, they can't demonstrate anything. Just because a scientist or a theist says something, that doesn't make that thing true. Only the data does. And I need to be able to, at least in theory, go and verify their findings on my own. Or at least have other people do it in my stead. People that I trust to do a good job. The data has to speak for itself. I don't want to have to take somebody's word for it. If it's possible to go out and verify it on its own merits, I need to be able to do that. If it's not, I'm not going to believe it. It's the capacity to do the work myself, or like I said, have others do it in my stead, that matters, even if I don't do so in all or even most circumstances. The people don't matter. It's the evidence that does.
So those are the three main, aspects that our authors want us to know about how evidentialist apologetics work.
Well, apologetics are pointless, so who cares? I don't care what message you're trying to push. I care if your talking points are demonstrably and factually correct. This is why we work so hard to verify these things in the first place. This is why we don't take your word for it. This is why we don't take faith seriously. We don't accept tradition in place of demonstrated fact, etc. Now, I understand that this is an echo chamber and they aren't talking to everybody. They're only talking to one group of delusional wingnuts versus another group of delusional wingnuts. But maybe if we look hard enough, we can get something out of it, if in no other way than just seeing why these people are so wrong. So, guy on the left, please continue.
Now we reach kind of an objection to the evidentialist position, right? And this is, the postmodern challenge to evidentialism is what our authors want us to pay attention to.
Now, I am not a fan of postmodernism at all, and I think it's kind of stupid in a lot of ways. But again, this is one of those places where different people mean different things in different ways about different ideas, so it's really hard to keep it all straight. Some of the fundamental tenets of postmodernism require that people question everything just for the sake of questioning it, and that's fine, that's basic skepticism. It doesn't matter if it's factually true or not, they just have to question it. And in that case, I think it is one of the few places where extreme skepticism is accurately being used. Except if you think about it, it's not even skepticism. It's just throwing out everything so you can come up with your own ideas, factually true or not, just because you really want to feel like you're in control. And that is really stupid. This is where the whole your truth thing comes from. The whole crap Oprah was tossing around for a while. It's dumb. It's just complete nonsense.
So what is the postmodern challenge to evidentialism? Well, they tell us that evidentialist apologetics seeks to present evidence for the truth of Christianity using methods of inquiry that are in principle acceptable to non-Christians, right? That's what we saw.
I don't necessarily buy that. Now, granted, he's still talking about fuzzy stuff there, and we have no specifics, but I haven't seen anything that comes out of religion, and I mean any religion, that I would agree is fundamentally worthwhile for discovering the truth behind that religion, at least any of the supernatural claims of that religion. I can look in the Bible and say, yep, I accept all the places that are mentioned that we have evidence for are real, because I do. It has nothing at all to do with the Bible. It has to do with the evidence. The Bible, the fact that it appears in the Bible is irrelevant. Those places are real because we have evidence those places are real. It has nothing to do with the claims. It has to do with the verifiable facts. And that's fine, but I don't think it gets them anywhere useful. It's like saying that just because New York City exists, that doesn't mean Spider-Man is real, or just because King's Cross Station exists in London, that doesn't mean a magical train from Hogwarts stops there. I'm still waiting for them to be able to bridge that divide, and let's be honest, they're not even trying.
This methodological approach has come under frontal assault from postmodernism. In essence, postmodernism denies the modernistic belief that there is an objective truth about the world that can be discovered using reason.
That was my complaint about it. Truth becomes meaningless because, let's be really honest, the postmodernists don't care. In that, they are just like the religious. Some of them go farther, which I think is even dumber. At least most Christians can point to the existence of, say, Jerusalem in the Bible as something that is demonstrably true. And I've seen postmodernists who go so far as to doubt the existence of reality. They don't act like it, as I've just had another discussion with a solipsist who kept saying, well, you can't prove reality exists. And I had to point out that that was an assumption we all make, and he made it too, since he was sitting there on the internet, which according to his beliefs isn't real, talking to people who don't exist for, well, no reason that he could possibly explain. Then he just vanished. Big surprise there. They don't want it pointed out that they are just being hypocrites, which they are.
According to postmodernists, truth is subjective, not objective. Our knowledge of reality is a construction that we kind of build up as we look at the world through our eyes and through the assumptions and experiences of our communities.
But isn't that what you're doing too? You believe the things in the Bible are true because your community, the community of believers, they say it's true. That doesn't make it true or anything, but they say it's true. And this is why I laugh when the Catholics, in particular, say, but the church says. Well, who the hell cares what the church says? Well, they do because that's their community. Their community says a thing. That thing has to be true because they'd feel really bad without their community. This is why I don't care about communities. I am not part of any community in that sense. When people say, well, you're part of the atheist community, I just laugh because I'm not. I'm me. If I share some things in common with other people, then great. For the sake of those things, we are part of the same metaphorical community. But that stops the second that agreement goes away. I am part of a local community with the next door neighbor insofar as our interests align. Outside of that, though, nope, I'm an island. That's how it works.
Right, and so that's kind of the postmodernist view, and of how truth is kind of gathered and understood.
And it's stupid. So far, I guess I'm in general agreement with the guy on the left. I really wish I had some clue who these people actually were if I actually cared enough to go find out, which I don't, but myself, I only care about coming to the most rational and evidentially justifiable positions that I possibly can, based on the best and most objectively verifiable evidence I can come up with, and no more. I don't care about your faith and your fifis at all. In fact, for a very long time now, I've been posting on my blog showing examples of one group of people complaining about another group of people, well, they're just doing this one irrational thing. But if you look at both groups, they're both doing the exact same thing, just with regard to different positions. These people are not rationally consistent. They're just hypocrites. And that's hardly a surprise, is it?
So why is this then a challenge to the evidentialist?
Well, yes. So therein lies the problem for evidentialism. If there is no universally recognized way of determining the truth, the evidentialist project of presenting evidence using an accepted method of established discipline can't even get off the ground.
And this is why religion fails. This is why I have so many problems with the way the religious do things. Evidence does matter. We are never going to be on the same page if you're going to reject that. I reject faith entirely, as faith is not a demonstrable path to truth. You can have faith in absolutely anything, no matter how absurd it is, and without relying on evidence in some fashion to validate what you believe, then you may, and you very likely do, just believe nonsense. Now, granted, these people don't give a damn. They just don't care. They just want to believe because it gives them an emotional woody, but that is positively stupid. Anybody who comes to me and says that they don't care about reality, which a lot of them plainly do not, I just laugh in their face because we are simply not on the same intellectual playing ground. You might disagree, but if you can't come to terms with what is important, then I'm not going to play along. Go find yourself someone else with a lower epistemic standard, because that's not me. Sadly, there's a lot of those out there, and that's who these people are really targeting.
Because accepted method no longer exists. So look, we're using the same method that you would use to convict a criminal of committing a crime, of a capital crime.
I hope that you wouldn't convict somebody of a capital crime based on the ridiculously terrible evidence that the religious try to trot out. Well, it says so in a book, or somebody wrote that down and I believe it, even though I can't be independently corroborated anyway, but it's just got to be true. Yeah, we don't convict people based on faith, at least I hope not. Although leaving your fate in the hands of 12 people who weren't smart enough to get out of jury duty, that's probably not a good thing either. Because you notice what they're doing, and the religious try this a lot. They are trying to equate a jury trial to truth, and not, say, a scientific evaluation. Jury trials do not determine truth. This is guilty or not guilty. This is not guilty or innocence. There's no truth here. It's just a preponderance of the evidence, often badly. They just show that you can walk 12 people into a building, whether you have any evidence to back it up or not, and get those 12 people to sort of agree on something because they all want to go home. That's not impressive, I'm sorry. That's why a lot of trials get overturned, because there's a lot that can go wrong with the process, and people, whether anybody likes it or not, people can be really, really dumb. In fact, most are. That's why we shouldn't leave important decisions to the generally uninformed opinions of stupid people, which mostly we're doing that today. This is all that religion does, right? Well, it sounds good to me. Yeah, who the hell cares?
Of taking their life. We're saying, no, let's come alongside and use the same type of argumentation and representation of the evidence, and the conclusion has to be to this high degree of probability.
But it's not. Now, I'm not saying that you can't have really good, solid, objectively verifiable evidence in a court trial. In fact, that needs to be the expectation. Testimony is fine, so long as it can be corroborated by something else. Well, I saw X happen. Great. Can you even verify that you were there? Did the thing that you say happened leave any physical evidence behind? Just because you can raise your hand and swear to tell the truth, that doesn't mean that you will. That doesn't mean that the thing that you think is the truth is actually the truth. That doesn't mean that you even know the truth. We know that memory is inherently fallible. You might be convinced that you saw a thing, but that doesn't mean that you saw the thing that you claim that you saw. This is true for people who go out in the woods and say, I saw Bigfoot, or I saw aliens. That doesn't mean you saw Bigfoot or aliens. That means you saw a thing and your mind interpreted it in a way that was often emotionally comforting to you. This whole thing sounds a whole lot like religion, doesn't it? And that's not a good thing.
Or, no. Let's look at science. Science also has this problem of induction, but we're used to putting our trust into the scientific method, so that way when outcomes occur and we're able to reproduce it, we're able to have peer members also look at the methods and the outcomes, then we can have a high degree of confidence that we can put our seats into this combustional explosive power and move it along roadways, and you can be confident that it will continue to go and not blow up.
Sorry, but I like the guy on the left a lot more than I like the guy on the right. He just rambles a whole lot less. But yeah, you're just wrong here. We trust the scientific method because it demonstrably works. It's the demonstrably part that's important. You get in your car and it starts. I guess unless you don't maintain your vehicle properly, but that's a different thing. It operates reliably and as expected because physics doesn't change on a whim. Now, granted, a lot of people have very unrealistic expectations of science. They're looking for the same thing that they want out of religion, capital T truth. Something that exists forever and ever and always and never ever changes because they don't want to have to ever think about it again. But that's not how reality is, though. All knowledge is provisional, and I've made this point many times before. It doesn't matter what you want it to be, it matters what it is. You need to deal with reality as it is. You need to grow the hell up. We might think we have a really good handle on things, that something works consistently in this way or that way, but that doesn't mean it will always work consistently this way or that way when we gather more information. We've repeatedly tested it and the results are always the same, so we say, well, for the sake of argument, for the moment at least, that's how it works. Then we make some new discoveries and we find out that maybe we weren't quite right. In certain specific circumstances, it might work in a slightly different way. Then that gets absorbed into our views, and we have a much more complete picture of how reality works. Things always change because we always learn more. That's the way reality is. We will never know everything. If we did, we wouldn't need science anymore. Science is consistently growing and evolving as we learn more about the world around us. And that's a good thing. It's a feature, not a bug. We keep looking, we keep learning, we keep evolving. Our knowledge keeps getting better and better and better. It keeps getting more accurate. But that doesn't mean we will ever know everything, because every time we learn a thing, that opens another dozen questions of things we still have to learn. Our knowledge has been getting better and better. But you can't say that with religion, can you? Because they assert that they already know it all. They don't need anything else. They've already got everything. Their faith is perfect. Where they find out that they're wrong, well, they'll never admit that, will they? They'll just cover over it with blind faith and wishes and dreams because they're too busy asserting that they were right all along. The evidence never impinges on their magical thinking because they don't care. And I'm sorry, if you think that's a better system than science, then you've got some major things wrong with you upstairs. You are an idiot, and you really ought to knock that off.
That's all out the window then, right? So the objective method of discovering truth cannot be used with people who believe that truth isn't discovered, but manufactured.
But that's really what the religious are doing, aren't they? They just won't acknowledge it. When you are relying on church tradition, that's manufactured. When you are relying on personal faith, that's manufactured. My book says a thing is just manufactured. You can't actually back any of this stuff up with something beyond your fifis and your faith. In actual reality, your feelings don't matter. And I know I use this a lot, but if you fall out of an airplane without a parachute, it doesn't matter how much you hate the idea of gravity. It still exists. It doesn't mean anything that you can scream all the way down that gravity isn't real. You're going to splat. That's the way it works, whether you like it or not. You don't matter in the equation at all. Your wishes and your dreams don't change reality, and whether you like it or not, this goes on for everything that happens in the natural world. You can't affect gravity, not on your own, not in your head. You can't affect heat, not on your own, not in your head. You can't just wish the weather away. You just don't have any power like that. It's time to grow up and deal with it. You can't just wish your imaginary friend into existence either. God either exists or doesn't. And I feel it will never demonstrate that God, any God, is actually real. You have to have something verifiable outside of yourself, and the religious never do. That's why they fare so badly in any discussion outside of their echo chamber. They just don't know how to deal with the real world.
So where do you go from there?
Right. And so our authors tell us that in general, evidentialists make common cause with classical apologists in rejecting outright the relativism and subjectivism of postmodernism, but both acknowledge that the rationalistic ideal of modernism does deserve criticism, right?
We're going to stop right there, but I agree. It does deserve criticism. Now, in my opinion, there are a couple of things going on here. There is reality, that thing that actually exists around us, whether we like it or not. We can argue about the whole solipsism thing in the comments because there are some people who are just dumb. But those things are completely beyond you. Humans exist in the world that we exist in. Our feelings on the matter are entirely irrelevant. Then there are the things that the religious, in this case, they just really want to be true. They want there to be a God. They want their morality to be consistent. Stuff like that. They just want it. However, those things in the second case actually belong in the first case. They are things about reality that would be objectively true no matter what anybody wants. If there is a God, then there is a God. If there are no gods, then there are no gods. No matter what you believe, no matter what you want, your faith means exactly dick. This is a point that the religious have a really hard time coming to grips with, right? Just like hating gravity all the way down does absolutely nothing, hating that there is a God, if there is one, that does nothing. Believing in a God, if there isn't one, that also means nothing. The real trick is finding out which is actually the case, because faith doesn't mean anything. It's either there or it's not, and what you think about the thing that's there or not is completely irrelevant. How do you know? Not what you believe, not what you have faith in. How do you know? What are the best methodologies that we can use to demonstrate the facts one way or the other? Well, the ones that we have and the ones that we know work, well, they don't show that any gods exist at all, do they? The religious can't suggest any alternative methods that produce demonstrable results. They just play make-believe, and that's not acceptable. These people have problems, and they don't really care about any of it. They just want to believe. And that is not now, nor will it ever be in the future, enough. Of course, trying to get them to admit it, that's pretty much impossible because they've completely left the rational reservation behind. And that's kind of sad, isn't it? Should people care about evidence? Of course. Do the religious? Not remotely. They're quick to criticize that fact in others, but absolutely never in themselves, because they don't care, and we're going to see a lot of that coming up. They prove just how unreasonable and irrational their beliefs are if we just let them talk. So let's go ahead and do that and listen in and see. Back again with Caved Across Apologetics, the, podcast, whatever it is, where two theists talk about whatever they want to talk about and often reveal more problems with their own theology than anything else. We started off about a week ago with a talk about evidence and postmodernism, and I think it gets really bad this time out. So we'll just skip all the prologue and get right to the action already in progress.
So yes, rationalism, the rationalistic ideal does deserve criticism, as the postmodernists suggest, right? Because people cannot find out the truth about God or any other ultimate issue in life through human reasoning and investigation alone.
That's your claim, because here's the thing that very few people want to acknowledge. Maybe there are no ultimate answers. Maybe all of the claims that you're making are just bogus. Maybe there's no ultimate meaning to life at all. We're just here because we evolved here, and when we die, we die. That's certainly what all the evidence that we have suggests is true, and your feelings don't matter. But suggest that to the religious, to a lot of people really, and they'll just freak out. They can't even consider the possibility that they are not special. Why? Because they're looking for emotional comfort, not truth, not fact. If the facts are uncomfortable, they'll just make up something different because they can't handle the actual facts. That's the sad part. They can't handle it because they're not mature enough to handle it. This is a very common part of the human experience, but that doesn't make it rational. I know I'm going to die someday. I have no reason whatsoever to think that anything else will happen after my brain flatlines. I'll be gone. I'll be dead. That'll be it. Nothing else is going to matter. That's going to be that, and I'm fine with it. It doesn't bother me one bit. Why? Because I embrace the reality that I'm actually in. And it wouldn't matter if it bothered me, because it's going to happen regardless. I have no control, and neither do you. So what's the point of being terrified of reality if it's going to happen anyhow? Learn to deal with it. Honestly, ask yourself that question and come up with a rational answer. Good luck.
And so the postmodernists, if that's the case, which seems to be the case, and that's what the evidentialists hold to, then postmodernists is left with no way at all to attain ultimate truth.
Once again, I hate postmodernism. I am an evidentialist in the sense that I expect objective evidence for any claim made about reality, but postmodernism, yeah, it can just go fuck itself. Because postmodernism is, in and of itself, completely irrational. It looks at the world through relative eyes, and I would assume, if you're going to apply that to science, to be anti-evidence, or at least anti-objective evidence, so I really don't know what this guy is on about. Now, if any postmodernists in the comments want to go and explain things, that's entirely welcome. Please feel free, go ahead. I want to understand, but at the moment, these are just terms being thrown around without any context or meaning, and as such, it's just kind of pointless.
Now, that's not true for the Christian. So you can make the criticism of, evidentialist kind of ideas that postmodernists make of, the modernist ideal of rationalism. You can make that criticism, but if you're a postmodernist, you have nowhere to go now to find ultimate truth, right?
You are still assuming that ultimate truth exists. This is a problem that I've run into with the religious. And it's not just religion, I suppose. So let's just include the quasi-religious, groups that also rely on faith and fee-fees to make determinations rather than facts and evidence. But these people construct models of the world in their heads that are simply not defensible on the outside. Now, for the religious, that would include things like the existence of the supernatural, say, just to give a quick example. They firmly believe that it exists, but outside of their heads, they can present no reason whatsoever to take it seriously at all. It's just a concept, something they invented whole cloth because it gets them where they want to go emotionally. We could also mention other ideologies where that's true, but we're trying to stick with religion here, so I'm trying not to stray too much. But a lot of people have this problem. They want this stuff to be true, so they just insist that it's true, but they can't show how they actually got there in any rational, evidence-based, intellectual way. And if you can't do that, then it doesn't make any of it true, does it?
For the Christian, though, on the other hand, the failure of modernism, this rationalistic ideal, leaves us with revelation. And so that's our way of discovering the ultimate truth about God and the world.
Except you can't show that you've ever had that. Just this morning, I saw a segment on Atheist Experience with Elliot and Armin, where a former atheist called in, and he had this experience, and he just couldn't explain it, therefore, God done it. It was one of the most perfect examples of, I don't get it, therefore God, that I've ever seen. This guy just kept trying to explain his experience and was just asserting all kinds of things about it, but he couldn't show how he knew any of it. How do you know it was God? No answer, but it just had to be because that's what he now believes. This is why I completely reject anyone who says, well, it's true from a Christian perspective, because I don't care about your perspective. I care about your evidence. If you are not working to verify these things that are in your head and prove that they are coherent in the real world, then you are an idiot. You and I are not on the same intellectual plane. And that's not ego speaking, that's just an acknowledgement that you have not done your rational due diligence to come to those conclusions in the first place. Just because you believe it, just because you want it to be true, just because it makes you feel really good inside, that doesn't make it true. And saying, from a Christian perspective, that doesn't prove that the Christian perspective is worthwhile to begin with. You have to justify your base preconceptions first. And these people aren't even trying because they don't care. They just really want to believe.
So the postmodernist has no way of discovering ultimate truth if indeed their criticism of rationalism is true. The Christian can accept at least some of that criticism of rationalism, but yet we do have a way of discovering the truth. It's through the revelation that God has given us.
Right.
But you don't. You're just asserting that you do. Now, I'm going to get a little esoteric here, but J.Z. Knight, a woman who lives in Washington State, is a psychic kook. She believes that she receives information from a 35,000-year-old mystic named Ranta. Hundreds of people have just picked up their lives and moved to the Pacific Northwest to hear her teachings. Now, she is a con man. There's tons of former followers that have purported that she stole everything from them and setting all that aside for the moment, assuming that she actually believes everything that she's saying, couldn't she just assert that she had a personal revelation from a magical spirit, and therefore she has every bit as much right to claim to have ultimate knowledge as the Christians on screen do? So why should we take them seriously and not somebody like Knight or any of the other psychic wingnuts that pop up all over the place? Why are their claims believable and the claims of your friendly neighborhood psychic lunatic not? If this was real, they'd have to have evidence to back it up. But they don't. They just really want to believe that it's true. It's really why they don't want to talk to us, because they could never withstand the barrage of criticism, and that's kind of a problem if you think about it.
So postmodernism, do better. Come up with the critique of revelation. There you go.
I'm not a postmodernist, but claims of revelation are bullshit. This is just, here's what I want to believe, and I'm hearing voices in my head, and I'm not insane, although you actually are. So what? Where are your critical thinking faculties? Why can't you be critical of your own beliefs like you are of everyone else's? This is why I think it's valuable to look behind the curtain and see the religious saying all the quiet parts out loud. They are saying and doing things that ought to be embarrassing because they can't put their own beliefs to the test that you would expect from anyone else. They just think that their beliefs are special and immune to rational criticism, and they're just wrong. It just shows how hypocritical they are. And this goes for a lot of different beliefs who are doing effectively the same thing. It's why I keep stressing that we have one standard and one standard only, and we need no others. If you can't demonstrate that the fundamental underpinnings of your beliefs are valid, then you have no reason to believe it in the first place. That you do is a problem with you. You are the problem. Knock it off.
Well, moreover, evidentialists, like classical apologists, stress the indispensability of reason as a means by which we are able to recognize God's revelation.
You haven't even established that your imaginary friend is real yet. This is as ridiculous as claiming Ramtha's revelation. Ramtha is just a made-up thing, just like God is. You have no corroboratory evidence to show that it is reasonable or rational to think that any of this is true. This is why we have to stop the religious right up front. Well, how do you know that? Explain without using your faith or your fifis as justification. Of course, they can't do that. These two jokers on screen, they couldn't do it. They just want it to be true, just like the people who follow Knight around do, so they claim, well, it's true. Just like the people who were following David Koresh did. They thought it was true. Just like the Heaven's Gate cultists did. They thought it was true. Look what that got them. There is absolutely no difference between any of these systems. These are dumb people trying to be dumb because dumb makes them feel good. There is no limit to human stupidity and gullibility. You people ought to be ashamed of yourselves. You really should.
While these apologists would deny that we can discover the truth about God on our own, they do contend that we can discover the truth of God's revelation by applying methods of such established disciplines as law, history, and science to the facts of Christianity.
There are none. Where are these supposed facts? This is just a continual line of assertions made with absolutely no rational justification because they really want it to be true. I think it's really funny how they just can't get out of their own heads. It's like the old joke from Northern Ireland, at least that's how I heard it, where a guy's just walking down the street in Belfast when he's surrounded by a gang. And they ask him, well, are you Protestant or Catholic? And he doesn't know what to say, so he says, I'm an atheist. And the leader of the gang says, yeah, but are you a Protestant atheist or a Catholic atheist? These are people who can't see anything but religion. There are the Evidentialists over there, and the classical theists over there, and the traditionalists over there, but they all just accept that God is a real thing because of faith. They don't even consider the fact that God isn't an established fact at all. They don't ask themselves those questions because they don't want an answer like that. There are some things that just exist because, well, they want them to. But that doesn't mean anything, though. You can't just say, God is real, without demonstrating that God is real. Yet that's not what they do, right?
So again, bringing it back to the method. In order to make the case, classical apologists directly confront what they regard as the self-defeating, irrational character of postmodernism. That is, they argue that postmodernism is forced to make absolute statements denying absolute truth. So that's the classic of all classic argumentation against postmodernists.
Well, I will agree with you that postmodernism is stupid, depending on how far you take it, and I have seen people who take it ridiculously far, but I don't think these two are taking their discussion nearly far enough. Granted, internal dialogue, we know, they don't think anybody outside of their cult is going to be watching, but they're doing it on an open platform where anybody can look in and be critical. Why are so many people utterly clueless on that? I make my videos knowing full well that theists can and may be watching, and I welcome that. I want them to show up. I want them to be intelligent when they do, which is not what we actually get, but I want them to watch because I want them to understand what they're doing wrong, what their icons and their heroes are doing wrong. But like I said, they're not thinking about things that way, are they? I expect them to be critical of what I say because I am critical of what they say. And then we can have a conversation over which side is best defended by the evidence. Sadly for them, it's never them, but I am open to them bringing something interesting to the table. They just never do. And that's why I don't encourage an echo chamber here. Go out and experience other points of view, figure out what others are saying, and whether or not what they're saying is defensible. The religious, sadly, they don't seem to be able to do that, but I guess that's kind of par for the course. Instead of being interested in the truth, they're just looking for confirmation. And I'm sorry, but that's just dumb.
There you go. There's no absolute truth. Oh, is that true? Yeah, that kind of thing, right?
Yes.
That's stupid when Frank Turek does it. First off, there is absolute truth called fact. Facts are demonstrable and testable and verifiable. There are no absolutely true opinions, though, except when those opinions are in alignment with the facts. It is my opinion that the acceleration constant of gravity in a 1g field is 9.8 meters per second squared. At least it's close enough for the current discussion at hand. Is that true? Yes, it is. I mean, it's actually 9.80665, etc. meters per second squared, but like I said, it was close enough. I could also say that my favorite flavor of ice cream is chocolate chip, which isn't really true since I don't have a real favorite. I like lots of things, but I could say that, and if it was true, then it would be true. I'm just reporting my own subjective experience, and my reporting is, in that theoretical case, correct. That would be my favorite flavor, and tomorrow that could change and be a different favorite flavor. I don't know. This is what happens when you're just playing musical definitions, as the religious tend to do, and that doesn't get you anywhere intelligent.
So they're forced to make that kind of statement. So evidentialists endorse the criticism, right, this self-defeating notion of postmodernism that the classical apologists also endorse. But their chief objection to it is that in everyday matters, people do not accept a pluralistic, relativistic view of truth, right?
Depends on how you're actually using the word, and usages do matter. Most of these problems are linguistic, and with having different expectations and usages and things like that. It also doesn't matter what most people think, it matters what is actually true. And that's why I'm very clear on this. I want to know, to the best of my ability, to find out what is actually going on out there in the real world that we all share. I don't care about anything else in this instance. I don't care how the truth makes me feel one bit. In fact, as we speak, I'm having a Reddit discussion on truth and the value of debating theists who clearly don't care about it, and most people are agreeing that what I'm after, I'll never get in any discussion with the religious because they just don't care. That kind of theist that I've been looking for, you know, the one who has a clue and a brain, pretty much forever, Those people simply don't exist. I understand that, but I'm not going to stop looking because that's really the only kind of discussion that's worthwhile having. Someone who cares as much about the facts as I do. I mean, fuck your faith, fuck your fifis, care about the facts. And on the religious side, those people just don't exist. That's kind of sad, isn't it?
Right. We don't say, well, the amount of money in my bank account is whatever somebody thinks it might be.
Right, because whatever is in your bank account, that is not beholden to your feelings. It has an objective existence outside of your head. You can actually go and verify it, no faith required. Now, try to do the same thing with your God. How do we show that your God is real, entirely absent your feelings or beliefs on the matter? The answer is, you can't. This is just a claim about objective reality. God either exists or does not exist. God either exists for everyone or does not exist for anyone. How do you demonstrate that this is what's actually true? Because I've been asking for any theist to be able to do that forever, and nobody has any coherent answers. It's either, but I have faith, or but I heard a voice in my head, or but I really want it to be true. None of those are worthwhile answers. None at all. How you feel has absolutely no impact on objective reality. That's not a very good example for what we're talking about here, though, is it? I want the verification. I don't want your incoherent babbling. I don't want your faith. If that's all you can offer, then you've already lost. Give up.
Right? Nobody says that, right?
Unless you're the United States government, yes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We don't discover it, we kind of create it. We'll try to tell that to the bank, right? I'm going to create the amount of money in my the illustration they use is they say that virtually all people are outraged when neo-Nazi groups, for instance, claim that the Holocaust never happened.
Because we have all the evidence that we need that it did. The same is true of the lunatics who say, we never went to the moon. Then who the hell left the reflectors up there that you can bounce a laser off right now? These people are real idiots. They are not living in actual reality in their heads. But then again, the same is true of these guys. It's why I don't care what you say. I care what you can prove. I don't care about your opinions when it comes to objective reality. I care about your evidence. And sadly for the religious, they have none. I'm not singling the religious out either. This goes for absolutely everyone. If you say that you saw Bigfoot, then I expect you to be able to back it up. Throw a body up on the table for us to examine. If you say that you are abducted by aliens, prove it. I mean, give me a crashed ship. Give me an alien body. I need something that I can study. Because unless I get something I can study, I am not going to believe you. I mean, I'll even go a bit. Give me cell phone pictures or something. Anything. I need something beyond your say-so and, well, it seems to me. Because that's not going to impress anybody with a brain.
So much for the postmodern claim that history is whatever people construct it to be, right? Or your bank account is whatever you construct it to be. Nobody lives like that, right?
Exactly.
Well, except the religious, because they believe things for which they can provide absolutely no objective evidence that it's actually true. They are doing exactly what he said, living as if there is a God, just like somebody else would have to live as if there was $1 trillion in their bank account. But that doesn't make any of it true. But with the God belief, there is no nasty call from the bank telling you that you're overdrawn. There are no immediate real-world consequences for living in the imaginary fantasy world in your head like the religious do. This is where I really wish being stupid was painful. Hopefully, then you wouldn't get so many stupid people, because we've got a lot of really stupid people out there. People need some kind of feedback on their positions, and that's where I think calling these morons out on their stupidity matters. Let's stop coddling these people. You believe irrational things for no good evidence-based reason. Stop being an imbecile. If enough people do this, eventually I think most of them are going to get embarrassed. Sure, you're going to get the fanatics who will lap it up because they've got a persecution complex, but for the vast majority of people, if everybody around them is telling them that they're an idiot, if they're laughing at them, if they're pointing and making fun of them, then they're going to have to figure it out eventually because it's going to start impacting their lives. Their lives are going to be ruined otherwise. Nobody's going to respect them. People aren't going to hire them, or at least they shouldn't for anything other than a door greeter at Walmart. They're either going to have to retreat into their echo chambers and live apart from normal society, which is okay for us because we don't have to deal with them, or they're going to have to take a giant step backwards and figure out what the hell they're doing wrong, which is also great for us because it improves society. So, win-win.
Yeah, even I've heard postmodern philosophers before say, well, yes, I do believe in this kind of postmodern idea of unobjective truth, but when I talk to people, I don't argue like that. Well, okay, then what's your point? Like, if you can't go based off your method, then don't be a status authority person to listen to. And make claims. It's just an odd predicament one finds themselves in there.
That's true, but you're doing the same thing. This is why I keep saying to stick to the one standard that we have that we know works. If I'm making a statement about reality, any statement, it's evidence all the way. If I'm expressing my opinion about something that doesn't address the real world, that's different. But when I talk about reality, I use one and only one standard because that's the only one that we have that produces demonstrable, verifiable results. And whether you like it or not, the existence of a God is a statement about reality. You are asserting that this God thing of yours actually exists and has an impact on the world in which we all live. Therefore, back it up. Do so in a way that others who don't share your beliefs can verify. Get rid of your faith and your fifis, because those are meaningless. Yet they don't want to do that, do they? They can't. The entire belief system collapses if they even try. So this isn't just postmodernism, which I will agree completely is just idiotic, but this is also Christianity. And not just Christianity, but all religions, because they're all doing the same thing wrong. And I find it hilarious to watch two Christians criticize the things that they disagree with while ignoring it entirely when it comes to their own religious beliefs. That's why watching these behind-the-scenes videos from time to time is so enlightening. It just shows what kind of hypocrites they are.
But it does seem that postmodern seems to be more on the way out, and I hear a little bit less of that, I think, in the world.
And guess what? Christianity's on the way out too, and for the same reason. It just isn't demonstrable. Most people aren't taking it seriously. This is why having standards matters, and why the religious, and a lot of other people too, simply don't. They are after feelings, not fact. And I'm after fact and not feelings. I don't make exceptions. I am only looking for the objective truth to the very best of my ability to determine it. Now, that's not to say that I'm necessarily going to get there. That doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to understand everything. That's the reality we live in. But I'm sure going to try, and at least I'm doing more than the religious are, because they just don't care. I do. In this arena, that's all I care about. I don't know what else to tell you. I think this whole thing is just silly because caring about your fifis and your faith is just childish. But anyhow, what did you think? Go ahead and put your thoughts about postmodernism down below, but I really want to know if you recognized all the hypocrisy as clearly as I did. I've had a couple of different discussions on this recently, mostly without the whole postmodernist thing, but I've had them with theists who really can't handle the truth, and the second that I pointed out that I don't care about their faith, they leave skid marks. They make every excuse in the book to get away because they have nothing else to say, and they can't understand why anybody else would have a problem with my faith or my beliefs or my Christian perspective. Honestly, these people are not bright. I don't know how else to put it. They are not rational. They are not intellectual. They don't care. I do. Sometimes it really feels like I'm the only one, and let's be honest, that's really sad.